You going to go
I'm on
first?
first. I thought you were on first.
No, you're on first.
Oh, oh my god. Well, that's a shock. Wow. Okay.
Panic.
Right. Panic.
Do you need to set up?
You need to help.
I will probably need
Like your
to
heartbeat.
airplay this to your.
Yeah, we can just plug it straight in.
Oh, plugging in would be good because then I don't have.
Plugging in works much faster. That's how I was doing mine. It seems
better,
to
yeah.
just seems to work much faster, much more reliable. Although I did have to restart. Are you doing restarting?
Right. Well, what I've been doing is taking pictures of some of you guys. We're not too far away, so you guys are the same over here side of the room. This is a little demo of what may be a similar to a future workflow that we could have with the replacement for Aperture and iPhoto, which is going to be photos.app, and there are several advantages to that. In fact, before the announcement, I was very interested in trying to find out a system for myself to place my photos in, so that they're available on my computer or on my devices, phone, iPad and so on. So I've been looking around for a service that would allow me to have all my photos available anywhere on any device. And that's actually quite tricky to find because a lot of the services either do one thing really well and the other thing I wanted really badly. And then you go to another service and it does the thing that the first one did badly well, but the second thing badly. And so there was no service that actually did anything 100%. Until Apple actually did a quick announcement about iPhoto and I started to look into it. And that is actually looking very promising indeed. It means that instead of my quite large collection of photos on my computer being stuck on a hard disk on my computer, and it's more difficult for me to do stuff with them unless I'm actually sitting there. So I can't see what photos I took a few years ago on my iPad, for instance, because they're stuck on my computer. What do I do? How do I edit them? So the promise of photos.app coming, I believe, early next year, maybe?
Yeah, it's what they said, isn't it?
Spring 2015, I think?
Yeah, they just said early next year.
Early next year, yeah. The promise is that we'll be able to place our iPhoto libraries or a collection of images in iCloud, and then they will be automatically available to our Macs, our laptops, our iPads and our phones and any device. And they won't need to be stored anywhere, so you won't need to keep certain devices up to date with different changes, with other changes you may make from one device to another. And the best thing for me especially is that I'll be able to sit down and edit a photo on my iPad, and within 2 seconds it will be available in its edited form non-destructively across all my computers and devices and laptops, my computers I use at work, the computers I use at home, and any mobile device in between. So any time on any device I can sit down and edit any image and go back as far as I like through every photo I've ever taken. So that's the promise of photos.app. And although it's not going to have initially all of the editing flair that you can perform today with Aperture, more and more things that are in Aperture will come into photos.app. And it's also what's called extensible. So that means that any third-party developers that create, say, visual plugins, black and white processing, for instance, the extensions in their apps that you buy will also be able to be used through photos.app on your computer as well. So you can edit and add visual effects through those external apps as well, but still using photos.app and still using your iCloud library. So everything just stays in sync and works. So as a little demo, the idea is that I use an app called Play Memories on the iPad, which is actually a Sony app, to connect to, it won't work at the moment because I haven't turned the server on, but that will connect to the camera, and the camera will then upload photos to the iPad. And then they will just appear in photos.app. So the idea in the future is when you've done that, taken some photos and just added them to your iPad, they'll just appear in your iCloud photo library, or iPhoto library that currently lives on your computer will be in the cloud. And
It's not expensive, Darren.
well, that is true. It's a good point. Depending on how many photos you have, you would have to potentially buy extra storage for the number of photos you have.
Yeah, they haven't
I've got the
announced
prices.
that yet.
Yes, they have. I've got the prices. The first 5 gig is free.
No, what I mean is they haven't actually announced if your photos count towards that allocation. So although there's prices
Yeah, I'm
for
not sure about
storage, so first 5 gig is free and then it goes up to 2 terabytes.
It's
What
quite good.
isn't clear is whether or not the photos you take form part of that storage.
Because photo
some
stream is free.
services, exactly. Some services don't charge you for photos. So it's quite. I mean, perhaps it's being optimistic, but fingers crossed they wouldn't charge you for storing photos. We'll see once the details are out. I think it's probably unlikely. In which case, if you've got 2
The
terabytes,
prices they've announced for storage are quite reasonable.
yes.
So this is my camera I'm going to connect to. The trouble is, when I connect to it, it will stop the video, so you won't be able to see what's happening. So I'll do that, and I'll transfer the pictures, and then I'll put it back onto...
Can you not connect to my phone and transfer it through that way from the camera? No, just do it quickly. That's right.
No. Right, so that is odd, looks like oh, maybe I can connect to 2 networks. So anyway, let's see what happens if I...
We do have the adapter from next door if you want to plug the iPad straight into the projector.
No worries. You might be able to see, actually. I've got a list of images starting to appear from the camera, and I'll just import those, and off we go. So there's a selection of images, just a few.
So that's a Wi-Fi camera.
That is a Wi-Fi camera indeed, yes. So I'm just going to say copy, and that's now copying those images I just took a few seconds ago to the iPad. Now the idea is, as a photography workflow, especially to check your images when you're on a shoot, for instance, you can use this method even if you don't use it for your final work. Although it is going to be able to cope with RAW photos, so you can shoot RAW and then transfer your photos to the iPad in RAW form, and they will upload still in their RAW original form to iCloud iPhoto Library, which doesn't exist yet. This is just a.
You can get Wi-Fi SD cards as well.
You can, yes. So
Is that
yes,
iFi.
exactly. iFi cards you can add to cameras that don't have built-in Wi-Fi, so then they can wirelessly transfer images to machines. You can set them up to pre-trust each other, so as you walk in the room with your camera, your computer will take images from it, so you don't have to do any import.
And the third option is you can get a camera kit connection for the iPad as well, which allows you to plug an SD card in the bottom of the iPad. So there are 2 kind of wireless options. If your camera's got wireless, they can transfer it directly. You can buy these wireless SD cards. I don't know what the prices are, but I think they're quite expensive. Yeah, but the Wi-Fi is built into the actual tiny SD card, so it's quite clever technology. Or the third option is a
I connect to Graham's phone.
yeah, password should be in there. The third option is a little adapter that plugs into the bottom of the iPad. You can plug your SD card straight into the bottom of your iPad or your iPhone or whatever, and copy directly from the SD card. So it takes it off the SD card in its raw format, as Darren was saying, and keeps it.
What, into the iPad as it is now, Graham, you mean?
Sorry?
You can take an SD card and have some connector into the iPad and download it.
Yeah,
How long
that's
have you been able to do that?
has anyone used one of those?
I had the phone kit on the iPad too.
It's quite.
Yeah, it's quite old. It's quite. I mean, there's newer versions.
Unfortunately, now it won't work on the new one.
There are newer versions for a Lightning connector or for a 30-pin connector, but yeah, you just get it from the Apple Store. I think it's like £30.
You can also plug your phone in as a USB into it.
Yes.
So that's worked quite well. I've just imported those photos from the camera. If I go into photos.app, we'll see those are the photos I've taken, and we can. This is very embarrassing. We can see some of the shocking results, and then just have a little
Thank you.
wander through it. Yeah.
Everyone looks really bored.
I think you were talking about
Yeah, it was, yeah.
Talking about
So,
that game
so-
app.
So the idea is, within this Photos.app app on both the Mac and your iOS devices, coming with iOS 8, you will have some quite decent editing facilities. At the moment, it's very limited. So if I was to edit this, for instance, I could do an auto enhance on it. I could do a crop, which will include a rotate. So I could do a crop and rotate, for instance, like that, and say crop. It's not a terribly good crop, but there you go. And I could apply some filters, some very basic filters, for instance. But these sort of tools are going to get an awful lot better. But the idea is, once you've done this and just said save, tap save up in the top corner, that photo is now edited, and that will then synchronize back to your iCloud library in the cloud, and everything else you use will be updated. So you then walk into the other room, sit on your Mac, and that photo is already updated. But the promise is the edits will be non-destructive. So if I did that edit on the Mac,
What does non-destructive mean?
it means you can always step back through your edits. So if you do something catastrophic and you just want to go back a couple of steps, you can just step back to where you were before, always back to your original photo, which is never destroyed in the editing process. You can always get back to your original photo. So if you have a horrific editing session, you can just wipe it all out and say, I'll start again. And some other more advanced non-destructive editing is where you can mathematically alter the image without having to save it again. So for instance, if you have an image, which is often the case, it's difficult to expose for both the land and the sky. So often an exposed photo that's correctly exposed for the ground, your sky will be blown out. So you can do a non-destructive edit of bringing down the lightness and the shadows of your sky to tone it back down to be the same as your landscape. That is a mathematical edit, because all it's doing is applying a darken filter around a certain area, and that can be done without resaving the picture. So that's a mathematically non-destructive edit. And at any time you can go back and change how big the sky was when you recrop the image, for instance. The maths will go with it and change. So that's quite a good feature. But that's just a quick demo of what it might be like in the future to add your photos to an iCloud library that isn't on your computer, isn't stuck on your computer. So anytime you can just go back on any device and make an album or something, and that album will then instantly appear on all your other machines. So what I'll do,
You can do most of that now.
You can do
except
most
for
of
the
this now,
iCloud
yeah.
stuff. You can do all, apart from the uploading stuff, the last step. If you go on holiday, you take your camera and your iPad with you. You could take loads of photos on your camera and transfer them to the iPad. It saves them in their raw file format. And when you go home and you plug your iPad into your computer, it will copy the photos across. And you might think, well, what's the point of doing that? Well, one of the I don't do this, but one of the reasons that's been suggested to me is that flicking through the photos on your iPad, doing that kind of initial edit of which ones you want to keep and which ones you want to throw away is exceptionally
it's
simple.
much nicer.
But you can go through and edit, because if you're anything like me, and I've got 2 young kids, so I will end up taking like 15 photos of the same thing. And only one of those is worth, well, if I'm lucky, only one of those is worth keeping, but I've got all of them, and I can go through it on the camera screen, but the tiny little camera screen is actually just not very nice and simple to see. We take our iPad anyway, for reading and bits and bobs, uploading the photos to the iPad, and then just deleting the ones very, very quickly is a nice, simple workflow that's a bit more pleasurable than fiddling around with the camera and looking at what you've got on the screen.
Yeah,
What I quite like with Aperture as well is that you can have it full screen, and you have that floating HUD. Because on other things, it isn't full screen, is it? So I wonder if that would be...
well, this is full screen on here.
Yeah,
Yes, I agree with you. I like that feature too.
it's great, isn't
Yeah.
it? Because you can see it's much nicer than having the surround and all the bits. And
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
It's
a
like
nice
the
way
first
to
kind of
review the quality of the photos you're
Yeah.
taking at the
think
time
so,
with your
yeah.
iPad in your bag before you get them home.
it fills the screen as you haven't got any clutter around. And
Yeah, you just see the image, nothing
Yeah,
else.
it's much better.
So what I'm going to do later on when I get onto my faster network is I'm going to share this to iCloud, and it will make a mini web-based sort of photo flip through album-y type thing. So what I'll do is I'll send that that web address to Graham, and then he can send it all out to you guys, and then you can see what it actually produces when you do share images from iCloud. And the idea is, if your images are already, this is what we don't know yet, but if your images are already on iCloud and you create an iCloud album, they won't need to be stored again as an iCloud photo album. So because your image is already there. So effectively you'll be able to do any of this sharing without having to resave anything or move any photos around. So it could potentially be very useful, very good. So what I'll do is I'll do that later on, and then you should receive an email that shows you the result of what it looks like
Can
when
I
you
just
share.
ask something about, if it's all on the cloud,
Yes.
I'm not saying it's going to go wrong, but something could, couldn't it? I mean, what about backing up and stuff like that?
Well, it's a little bit like iCloud as well. I mean, it's
You should always have a backup
it's-
of everything.
it's often
Yeah.
synchronized. So for instance, I use 3 computers which can use iCloud, including another computer which is a Windows machine that can also use iCloud, which I can sync with. At any stage, I could bring that data down on any one of those machines. And you're right, that backup wouldn't exist unless I brought everything down. But it's currently the same thing for my music collection in music. I don't actually have any music on this device, and
So-
yet here's all my music. So, there's ABBA. They're always safe, aren't they? So, this music doesn't exist here, but it's safely stored in iCloud. And if I tap one, it should play.
I think with that kind of thing, I think it's a great question. I think if you're a professional photographer, I think you'd always have your backups. You would
So I've
always
got
have.
I've got
You
a
would
RAID
always.
system
You,
that
yeah, exactly.
backs
You
up
would
and
have
backs up.
local storage
So you would still
backed
have
up.
that, yeah.
For a general user, I don't know. You're putting your faith in Apple to have redundant servers and backups
Yeah,
and stuff,
yeah.
but that is pretty much out of your hands. I think it's prudent to back it
Yeah.
up. At the moment, we're not sure what that means. So
Yeah, it's
if
all new
you're
at the
using
moment.
Time Machine at the moment to back up your computer, well, if you take loads of photos and they're on the iPad and they go up to the cloud, if they then come back down again to your Mac, would Time Machine back that up so you've got a hard copy? There's a few kind of unanswered questions. I suspect the answer is yes, because how iPhotoStream works, the current kind of version, PhotoStream works, sorry, the current version is that you take loads of photos on your phone, they get synchronized up to the cloud, because your Mac almost, by definition, kind of has more storage and everything else. It will download all of those photos to your Mac, and then when my Mac does its Time Machine backup, I've got a copy on my computer and a copy on my Time Machine and a copy in the cloud. That's got to be a fairly catastrophic failure to lose all 3. Whereas with my phone, if I take photos using a camera and I upload them from my Mac, I only have the 1,000 most recent photos in my photo stream on my phone, because Apple have limited that because of the storage space of the phone. The changes to iCloud Drive are probably going to be that you'll have access to all of your photos from your phone rather than 1,000, but the photos, exactly like iTunes Match, won't actually be on the phone. They just have a little
Well, they won't
thumbnail.
have to be on the, actually they won't be able to be, because
No, it's too
your
big.
photo library is way bigger than your phone will ever be able to store.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's really access to those files.
It's access, yeah.
But they, like as Graham says, this isn't new. We don't know what's going to happen yet. But with iCloud Drive, which should show you the access to your iCloud photo library, I'm presuming, I think, on that drive would allow you to just drag and drop it and copy a local copy to back up anyway.
I think it's great.
It's just the files won't be stored or accessed, I should say, directly on your Mac anymore. They're freed, really, to be accessible from anywhere. But you can still log into your iCloud Drive, or I'm expecting you will be able to, and copy that data off onto another drive to back it up.
Does
So
anyone,
just a
does
little
anyone
taster
take their,
of photos.
sorry, does
But
anyone,
aren't
anyone
we
take
then
their
reliant on Wi-Fi or some sort of telephonic
Yeah.
signal?
You are to upload it. So if you're in complete isolation and you've got your camera and your iPad, then all you've done is transferred it to the iPad and you've looked at them on the big screen and you've edited them or whatever. It won't synchronise until you get to a place where it has an internet connection. So if you're in the middle of, if you're in a
Russian steppes or somewhere, you
Yeah.
couldn't show someone a photograph.
no, but you couldn't do that. I mean, at the moment that you wouldn't do anything with that at all at this stage. But all you will be doing is freeing up space on the SD card and storing them on the iPad rather than storing them on the SD card. You could, of course, leave them on the SD card and have a copy on the iPad. I'm always a bit concerned that I've only got one SD card, and towards the end of a week's holiday I've got like 550 pictures and they're just on this one SD card.
Well, you should have more than one SD card.
But even if I had two SD cards, I'd still only have one. I still only have one copy of the photo, and so it just provides a way of backing up your photos whilst you're on holiday, or another way of reviewing your photos.
Bank account with a lockable vault.
I think iCloud Photo is going to behave quite closely to how iTunes Match behaves, where your library is in the cloud and you access it. You don't. So, for instance, my music library is 20 or 30 gigs, but my phone is a 16 gig phone. But I can access it, all of my music, from any of my devices at any time. But you're exactly right. You do need connectivity for that. To be able to access it at that point. So if you wanted to make an album, say, on your phone to send to someone from some photos you'd previously taken, you would have to have connectivity on your phone to do that at the time. Although if you didn't have connectivity at that time, you could wait till you got back to the hotel room and do it on the Wi-Fi there. But you do have to have connectivity.
And it would count if you're in, if you're abroad, and I think it's really worth saying
data
that
usage,
it would count as your data usage.
That would.
And data usage, although it's getting cheaper in parts of Europe, is still exceptionally expensive. So if you were to upload, probably even all of those photos, it would almost certainly blow your data usage for the week, unless you pay a lot more. So you can turn that off, of course. You don't have to upload any of your photos, and you just use it as we were saying, just as a way to edit and view the photos differently. You upload it when you get to Wi-Fi. You upload it when you get home. But it's just to point out that at the moment there are several ways of connecting your photos to your iPad if you're taking them both abroad. And if you had, does anyone actually do that? By the way, does anyone actually take a camera aboard with their iPad and upload them?
Yeah.
Or on holiday, doesn't have to be abroad.
Yeah, that I've done in the past. We went walking in Derbyshire recently, and I've recently got a new iPad mini, and it was right at the beginning of the month, and with some web surfing and general uploading and stuff, and using the maps. In about a week, I used my gigabyte of monthly allowance, and I had to pop into a 3 store and get a 10 quid's worth of pay as you go.
Just to finish off, this is the only screenshot we have of the new Photos app. It's a high-res one, so I think Graham found this actually. But you can sort of see the sort of things you might be able to do. Here's a list of your photos down the left-hand side. We don't know yet how metadata is going to be able to be changed, edit data associated with your photo, like location and so on, and tags. But over on this side, you can see a little bit of what's going to possibly appear with the editing. And there is actually quite a few extensive looking editing tools to pop into. This is without the possibility of extending what photos can do through other applications.
Quite a few of Apple's features are there.
Yeah,
that's
many more than
good.
iPhoto, but probably not. I think the general consensus is not as many as Aperture.
No, not on day one. No, but
And
I think
certainly plugins.
they'll be added to. But there's quite a few editing tools there, so lights and shadows and so on. But this is an intelligent controller. As you drag here, these figure out themselves which settings, although you can alter them manually. These are all automatic as you drag this slide to improve your photo. For instance, here's a blown out example of a sky with a not blown out example of the sky. So how far do you want to go with that, and bringing all the edits towards making the photo look like that. And then we've got colour corrections and white balances, black and whites using red tones to get the tonal controls, definition, vignettes, and quite interesting levels controls. So there's a fair bit of stuff in there, and in the crop tool there's a very good straightening tool as well, so it's not just for cropping. So I think there's going to be quite a few.
What about curves? They've got curves on there.
Curves are, I think that's what they call levels now really, but there's histogram editing controls.
No, it isn't.
Not yet.
Not yet. So that's just a sneak peek of what photos might look like on your Mac, and how it will link possibly to your iPhoto library when it's living in iCloud, and then how that links through to your iPad. They'll all just update each other whenever you edit anything.
What are these symbols to the right of the traffic light up there? What are they?
Oh yes,
Yes,
very good, very well spotted. Let's see what they say. That's just, I think that's thumbnail sizing.
Yeah.
Thumbnail sizes. So yes, it's all early days yet. We only have
So
one
it looks like there's some sort of means of file structure there, because
Hopefully.
you've got moments.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So you're going to be able to. It looks like be able
Have a
to
library.
navigate.
Yeah. So the idea is that will mirror the file structure that you see in photos. When you see there's a moment and a collection. So if I go back, I can see the year it was taken, and I can go back again and see thousands and thousands of photos and go back through the years. So it'll mirror that structure, I think.
Okay.
So there you go.
Thank you very much, Darren.
Thanks.
Excellent.